In the end, your friends are going to let you down. Family. They're the only ones you can depend on.
That's James Gandolfini, passed away at the age of 51. To talk about it is our good friend, ABC News entertainment editor, David Blaustein. David, good morning this morning.
Good morning, McGraw.
Sad news when we heard about James Gandolfini yesterday.
It's devastating. I mean, I think there are literally people who find this to be devastating and shocking. The Sopranos and Tony Soprano, an iconic character, iconic, a word that we toss around that seems to lose its meaning, but not when it comes to James Gandolfini. You cannot understate or overstate the impact of that particular character on television.
Let's get to that in a second. There are very few characters that actors are born to play, and it seems like James Gandolfini and Tony Soprano, it wouldn't have worked unless the two came together.
It wouldn't have worked, and what we were just discussing ties into this particular discussion, because James Gandolfini and Tony Soprano was the unlikely anti-hero. James Gandolfini was the unlikely character actor to play this leading role, even turning him at times into a sex symbol, if you will. And that's not something he ever imagined for himself. In fact, when he was first cast, I think he kind of had the feeling that this could be a mistake because I'm not the type of person I think Tony Soprano should be, or I don't look like what I think Tony Soprano should be. In other words, he didn't think he was pretty enough necessarily to play that type of role. But that's what we loved about Tony Soprano. That's what was so appealing about this particular character, a character unlike anything we have ever seen before. The mob boss who lives next door, the mob boss who has problems with his mother, has problems with his wife, has problems with his kids, problems that we can all relate to. But at the same time, there is a dark underbelly to that character. And by the way, that dark underbelly of that character and The Sopranos, I believe, is something that James Gandolfini struggled with throughout his tenure as Tony Soprano, and I think it even took a toll on him at times. And if you go back and you listen to some of the interviews, and I'm not just talking about various press conferences and things he did on TV, I'm talking about things that he said to me and maybe 3 or 4 other reporters in one fantastic moment, 40-minute session that I had with James Gandolfini once. This was something that he struggled with because Tony Soprano was nothing like the person that he was. And it's one thing when you play a character in a movie where, you do it for a few months, maybe 2 or 3 months, sometimes just 2 or 3 weeks, sometimes a week, and then it disappears. But this is a character that he played over the course of 8 years, 6 seasons, but it took them 8 years to do it. And I think if you read between the lines and start asking yourself, well, why did it take them 8 years to shoot 6 seasons? I think some of that had to do with the fact that James needed a break from Tony.
From all accounts, you met him, you talked to him, you knew him. He was a shy guy, right? Wasn't he kind of?
He was very soft-spoken, and he did not like the press. He was not comfortable with his fame. But, here's the other thing. He was an incredible human being, and I even heard one of his friends describe him as complicated or complex, and I do believe that too. But here's something that I like to talk about, which isn't really being discussed too much this morning. Post 9/11, James Gandolfini was fantastic. He would just randomly show up unannounced to firehouses throughout New York City, police precincts, and it was unannounced by design. He did not want the media there. He did not want to take attention away from the firefighters or the police officers. This was a man who would sit down for hours in a store or a restaurant and sign autographs to raise money for a girl with cancer. And he didn't ask for media attention for it. He would do many of these things away from the spotlight of the media. This was he was an imposing, larger-than-life figure with that tough guy veneer who really wore his heart on his sleeve.
I've heard you say this morning, David Blaustein, that The Sopranos changed television. How did it change television?
It changed television by changing the narrative, by upping the ante. That show was so good and garnered so much attention for HBO, everybody in television had to turn around and say, oh, we need to be as good as The Sopranos. We need to tell stories like this. We need greater character development, not just about the main person in the show, but all of the peripheral characters as well. We have to be better because The Sopranos is so good. And everything that you see on TV today, all of the shows you love, except maybe 16 and Pregnant and shows like that, are all inspired by The Sopranos. There is a direct link. The reason why those shows are so good, and I believe that television is better than it's ever been. Take away the stupid reality shows and look at the scripted dramas that we have, and they are better than they have ever been. And I'm talking about cable, basic cable, and network television, and it all leads back to The Sopranos.
It's really, there's no question about it. It's the best of television and the worst of television, and no question this is the renaissance of television. There's more good stuff on there today, and you have to...
That was so poetic, McGraw.
Thank you very much. I heard my friend David Blaustein mention that. But it's also interesting how network television, that's where it really switched, where cable and HBO can do things, and it works on cable. And I know the networks have tried those types of really gritty, great, over-the-top dramas, and it really hasn't worked on network television.
It doesn't quite work as well on network television. I mean, CBS has done a great job with those procedurals, and I think some of The Sopranos and the way that they tell those stories kind of have seeped into those procedurals as well. They've become grittier because of The Sopranos. But it's the narrative of The Sopranos and the character development, I think, that also makes or has also influenced network TV and a lot of the shows that we see today. Yeah, you can't show topless people on TV, and you can only simulate certain things, if you know what I'm saying, so much on TV, particularly late at night, but still, Scandal is a show that comes to mind. It's an ABC show. That is an excellent show, and if we sat down and had some time, we could probably easily draw parallels between that show and The Sopranos. Still, cable TV has sort of proven to be the better place for scripted dramas. I think if you asked an actor or a showrunner or creator where they rather have a show, if they're not that concerned about the money, because they're going to get a lot of money either way, they'll get more money from the network. But if you ask them the choice of where they'll have more creative freedom, where they'll be able to flesh out a story the way they want, they will tell you that cable is the place to go. And also The Sopranos, and believe me, this has to do with James Gandolfini and what he was able to do as Tony Soprano and how that informed the show. I mean, that also birthed several other shows. I mean, Matthew Weiner, who's the creator of Mad Men, he's from The Sopranos. Terrence Winter, who is the creator of Boardwalk Empire, he is from The Sopranos. And again, it's because we have to give David Chase credit. He's the creator of The Sopranos, but James Gandolfini was his muse, the muse in which allowed him and inspired him to create such a dynamic and searing, indelible television series.
That's David Blaustein, ABC News Entertainment editor on a sad day. James Gandolfini passes away at the age of 51. David, thanks for checking in. Have a good day.
Thank you, McGraw.